What Happens at Night by Thomas Alexander. The Wrong Night. The humidity in the French Quarter doesn't just sit on you, it burrows. In a cramped apartment above a jazz club, an old man named Castile sat in a velvet chair surrounded by the smell of guttering candles and old paper. He didn't turn around when the door lock clicked. He didn't even flinch when Julian stepped out of the corner, pulling a length of reinforced piano wire taut between his gloved hands. "You're late," Castile whispered, his eyes fixed on a cracked mirror. "I expected you at midnight." Julian didn't smile. He never did on the clock. He moved behind the chair, the wire singing as it stretched. Traffic was light, unlike your tabs at the casino, Pop. You owe some very impatient people a very large sum of money. They don't want the cash anymore. They want the example. They're sending a shark to do a god's work, Castile wheezed, his voice bubbling with a dry, rattling laugh. "You think you're the hunter? You're just a finger on a trigger. But tonight the moon turns bruised. You're headed to the island, aren't you? Isla de Plata." Julian leaned down, his breath cold against the old man's ear. "I'm headed to a beach with a drink in my hand. You're headed to a pine box. Let's not overcomplicate the travel plans." He crossed his arms, the wire biting deep. Castile's hands clawed at the air, not for mercy, but for purchase. With his last gasp, the old man hissed into the stagnant air. "The hunger you carry. On the island, it finally gets fed. You'll see the skin rip, boy. You'll see what you really are." Julian held the tension until the room went still. He wiped a microscopic fleck of something off his tailored sleeve and checked his watch. "Whatever you say, Pop. Try not to haunt the rug. It's silk." 3 hours later, Julian was tucked into 1A, 3 fingers of scotch in his hand. He felt that dark, oily heat in his gut, the glow of a man who's just committed a sin and watched the world look the other way. But as the flight attendant leaned over to clear his glass, the cabin lights hit her face at a jagged angle. For a heartbeat, her skin looked like gray, unbaked clay. Her jaw hung too low, and her eyes were yellow pits of sulfur. He lurched back, nearly cracking the glass. "Are you all right, sir?" she asked, her face perfectly human again, her smile professional and empty. "Fine," Julian muttered, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs. "Just the scotch. Bring me another." He landed on Isla de Plata as the sun began to die. The air smelled of hibiscus and salt. He went straight to the hotel bar looking for a game. He spotted her at the end of the mahogany rail, a girl in a white sundress, looking vulnerable and perfectly, beautifully lost. He watched her the way a wolf watches a deer with a broken leg. I wouldn't even have to try, he thought. He slid onto the stool next to her, flashing his best predatory grin. "You look like you're waiting for the world to end," he said, his voice a smooth, dangerous purr. The girl turned to him, her eyes bloodshot. I'm just waiting for the transition, she whispered. It's the wrong night to be a stranger here. Julian laughed, a low, arrogant sound. Baby, being a stranger is the best part of the trip. Let's go for a walk. The beach is empty, just us and the moon. He led her toward a cluster of palms, his grip on her arm tightening just enough to let her know who was in charge. He pinned her against the rough bark of a tree, his face inches from hers. You know, he whispered, I'm a very dangerous man to talk to. The girl didn't flinch. She looked up at the moon, which had turned a sickly, bruised purple. I know, she said, her voice dropping into a wet, guttural growl. But tonight, you're just the appetizer. Her neck snapped back with a sound like dry wood breaking. Her jaw unhinged, stretching into a cavern of obsidian teeth. All across the beach, the tourists were changing, their skin ripping open to reveal gray muscle and hooked claws. The honeymooners, the bartenders, they weren't people. They were a hunger that only woke once a year. Julian bolted, his professional calm shattered into primal terror. He dodged lunging shapes and the sound of bones snapping as he dove into a dark storage room beneath the hotel, slamming the bolt home. He panted in the pitch black, clutching his useless pistol. Just wait for the sun, he hissed to himself. Just wait for the sun. Then, from the corner of the dark room came the sound of claws scraping stone. A pair of yellow pits ignited in the dark. A voice, distorted and gravelly, mimicked his own cold arrogance from the night before. Whatever you say, Pop. I'm sitting on the mountaintop now. I've got a mixed drink in one hand and a front row seat to the show. The screams are faint up here, muffled by the surf and the warm breeze. It's a hell of a view.